Hello, Yvette, and thank you for joining us today in a conversation with Safe Security. Welcome to this conversation.
Happy to be here. Very happy.
So, Yvette, you are a board member of multiple public and private organizations. And as you know, recently the SEC in the US, but also regulators across the world, they made proposals around cybersecurity risk management. Around how a company reports cybersecurity risk management, how a board oversight or looks at cybersecurity risk management. As a board member, what is your reaction to these proposals? And in your view, what are the top questions that you look out for that you would recommend your fellow board members to also consider?
Well, I have to say that the SEC requirements and in general, regulatory requirements are formalizing what we should be doing anyway. As a board, we are responsible for risk. We have to be able to understand what that risk is, and we have to assess if we're in the right, if we accept the right residual risk that we have. So to me, the real important questions when it comes to cyber, first of all, not everybody on the board is a cyber expert. And we have to know that, understand that, because it's good to have different areas of expertise on a board. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to define for a board what our risk categories are. So understanding that risk landscape to say, you know, these are the types of cyber risks. You have internal risks, you have external risks, you have people risks if people aren't trained, or if you have a bad actor inside your company. And so all of these different risk categories, including, of course, the business risk itself, and what it is that we have as potential concerns to ourselves. So after defining that landscape, now everybody knows what we have. Then I think we have to track what it is that's happening in each of these risks, right? We are doing the following things to make sure that we don't have a ransomware attack, et cetera, et cetera. So in each of the categories, we're doing a lot of things. But then again, think of the board members that maybe aren't cyber experts. We also have to understand, as the third thing, what's the best practice? What are other companies doing? What's the bar that we should be at, right? So let's say, for example, we pick a risk framework, NIST or something, right? And we say this is considered the best practice today, and we are adhering to that, right? So now we know we're adhering to this. This is where the best standard is. And we're above it, below it, and you know, so now all of a sudden we have defined for a board where I sit compared to best practices, and I have an idea of what all of my things I should look at are. And so once we've ranked ourselves, I think it's very important to be able to say, now what, right? So maybe the fourth thing I'd say is if I'm not comfortable with the risk landscape, how quickly can I get to a level that I am comfortable with, or we're comfortable with as a board, and how much would that cost me? How much time would it take, et cetera? And then probably the final thing that I would say is really important, now that we understand our risk, we understand what it's going to take to get us to a different place. What if something happens anyway? Because the whole idea is if you understand your residual risk, there's some risk there that we're accepting, you know, and so if there's something, we have to have business continuity plans. How do we get out of it quickly, and how do we recover? And I think as a board, as a CEO, as a management team, as a shareholder, those are the types of things that we want to make sure we're looking at on a regular basis.
So great points, Yvette. And if I talk about the other side of the table, the security team or the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, how should he or she prepare for such a conversation? We, of course, talk to many of these CISOs. Some CISOs are already at this level of conversation, but at the same time, there are CISOs in the community who are struggling to understand how to bridge the gap between cyber risk, which is a very, very technical and process-oriented risk, versus the business language, the business risk that you mentioned, or the language of risk, as you mentioned. What would be your advice for a CISO to prepare for such a board meeting? What analytics or preparation that he or she can do?
So it's very interesting. What I hear from a lot of board members is that they are looking to understand from the CISO the things that I just described as to where is how do I see the holistic picture? But many times what CISOs will give is a status report. I did a bunch of things. I have bought a bunch of tools, and here are the results of the tools. It sounds fantastic, but there's no context in which the board can understand that. So the biggest advice I give to CISOs is define the context first. And then every time you have an update, you say, here's our context again. Maybe there's changes to it because the risk landscape has changed. But once you have that landscape, you can always compare to what your best practice is. And if you have that mindset as a CISO, you now have a relationship to not talk about what you did. Of course, you're a great CISO, otherwise you wouldn't be employed by this company. So what we want to know is what is the residual risk based on all the great things we're doing, more than what are the great tools that you picked. So always keep things into the landscape category number one. Our landscape category number two. Here's what we've done. We've increased our handling of our threat surface. We are at the goal. We've exceeded our goal. But board, here's the residual risk. Here's the risk that we are sharing. Right? We know that we cannot put our data center into we don't have physical control over that. And so there's a risk somebody can walk in there. I'm making this up, but the thing is there's always residual risk. If a CISO can articulate that very crisply to the board, they will be very, very appreciated.
Great, Yvette. If you look at the history of financial risk, actually, financial risk management typically has this kind of a discussion led by the CEO and the CFO team with the board members and internally at the management level also. What is the role of the CEO and also the CFO here to coach and help the CISO on one hand, and also act as a bridge between the board and the security team?
I think a very important one. And certainly I'll take the CFO first, because the CFO is managing risk on a regular basis and in partnership with the audit committee, always looking at all of the very financial oriented financial reporting and with the various audit internal, external, looking at all of the things that we can do for compliance, for all of the financial risks that we have. Now, you take cyber and add it to that. It's likewise something very important that we have to manage. What is the financial risk that we're taking in a cyber event? And so how do you do that? I'll go to the CEO now. It's really important that you take your entire executive leadership team and involve them in cyber. Many times people say, well, that's what we have a CISO for. So I'm focused on the business and the CISO's over there doing that cyber stuff. Not the case, because every business adds business-specific risk to a cyber environment. By the way, not just a cyber environment, to financial risk, to compliance risk, to just overall business risks and strategic risk. So risk is something that we have to involve every single employee in. And a CEO that really sees that can make sure that those conversations happen. And then a CISO has the ability not just to say, I'm looking at cyber risk only. You could really say, I'm looking at overall risk and reporting on that holistically with my business partners who agree with the implementation of tools, the mitigation plan, the business continuity, and how it is that we're handling that risk. And again, now you've put a holistic picture on the table for a board, so a board can say, have a great discussion to say, all right, are we comfortable with the residual risk that we have, or do we need to take some action?
That's a great advice to the CEO and the CFO. So I'll move to the last question now, Yvette, which is, so in helping the board members manage cyber risk as per the new proposed regulations, and also improve the overall cyber risk management practices in the industry, how do you think Safe Security platform can play a role?
Well, I think in general, the key is to provide the tools for a CISO to have the discussions with the board, to have the discussions with the leadership team, with the business units. I think it's important to be able to have data. Data is a very powerful thing. And one of the things that we have to instill in everybody is that transparency is key. And so this is not about hiding something and saying, I'm doing a lot of things. It's about the fact that we clearly define our residual risk. And then if something were to happen, it's likely to happen through that residual risk because we agreed to take it. So SAFE helps define what is that residual risk. So you say, take a category, for example. So SAFE looks at processes. SAFE looks at technology. SAFE looks at the people aspect. Let's just take one of those. We'll take people. How many people have been phishing trained? We've trained 90% of our people. We have a residual risk that 10% of the people are not even trained. And then maybe we have some other residual risk that some of the 90% didn't take the class well, didn't pay attention. You know, there's always that, but we have a very clear residual risk that 10% have not been trained. And so you want to put that data very clearly in front of the team. Let's take another example, our internal assets, our internal equipment. And what I like about SAFE is it's not about my products, not about SAFE. You pick all your favorite vendors. You can have your favorite firewalls, you can have your favorite laptops, whatever it is that your internal equipment is. It's not vendor specific. So you have all of these things. And let's say, for example, we don't even know how many assets are on. We do asset discovery and we realize that there are assets on our system that we don't know about. That's a residual risk. Are we comfortable with that? Are we not comfortable with that? So the second thing is, of the assets that we know we have, 60% are fully upgraded to the latest versions, which of course is a big cyber risk mitigation, is to be up to date. The board needs to see that. So SAFE takes all of that data and says, here is where we should be, 100%, 100%, 100%. By the way, that's hard to achieve for any company. People are traveling, you have people that aren't, the laptop hasn't been turned on in a while. But the point is that you can put in front of the board very quantifiable information that says, here's how up to date you are with best practice in category A. Here's how you are with best practice in category B. So it tees up the conversation so that you can say, all right, are we comfortable with this risk? Are we accepting this risk, or do we need to take action? And then if we do want to take action, how much will it cost? How long will it take? And it helps with that too. So it's all about creating the right conversation and the right context. And I'm excited that we're really making progress to get there and be able to lay that out for boards.